Hey, I'm Q RuPaul, and welcome to Lesson 14 in our series. Now, if you remember in the last lesson, you got a big boost to your Spanish. We worked a lot with the verb ir, which means to go. Today we're going to be continuing to talk about the verb ir, but we're going to teach you about the reflexive form. And I know you don't know what that means yet. Now, this is where you really need to keep an open mind, because remember when I told you that your English will not match Spanish perfectly. This is going to be one of those times. Let's start with a quick review. Last time you learned the verb ir, which means to go. Now if we conjugate that verb in the present tense, in the first person it would be yo voy, I go. In the second person it would be tú vas, you go. Now you know you can leave off the yo and the tú because it's very clear from the conjugation who you're talking about. Now when we used this in lesson 13, we were talking about going to a specific place, like voy a la playa. I go to the beach, or it can be translated as I'm going to the beach. But the question then becomes, in a sentence like this, like if you just say, I'm going, but you never really imply or say where you're going, would we still translate this the same way? Would we just say, yo voy, or just voy? And the answer is no, we're not going to do it that way. As you can see from the board, in order to express this same idea in Spanish when there's no destination either named or implied, I'm going to have to add some words. So if it's I, it becomes me voy, and if it's you, tú, it just becomes te vas. The key here is not to overthink this. Don't try to translate each one of these words and be like, why is there a me? What am I saying? I'm going to me, or... Don't do that. This concept doesn't really exist in English, so it's not going to translate literally. Just accept it as it is. It's different. If you had to make a stretch and compare this to English, it's probably similar to saying, I'm headed out, I'm leaving, in that kind of context. If that would fit, then you probably want to use me voy or te vas, depending on the sentence. Here's an example. You're hanging out with all your friends, and after a few hours, one of your friends is ready to leave. They're going to say, me voy, meaning, I'm going, I'm heading out, I'm leaving. Now this works really well for questions too. So if your friend's like, hey, when are you leaving? When are you heading out? They'll ask something like, ¿Cuándo te vas? If you're not really ready to go yet, because you're having a great time, you could answer something like, me voy en una hora. Hey, I'm going to go in an hour. I'm going to head out in an hour. And of course, you can always throw something in from an earlier lesson like, no tengo prisa. I'm not in a hurry. Now, you'll often hear this used with the Spanish word ya. You learned ya already, and actually it meant already. When we talk about things in the past tense like, ya fui, I already went. Well, it can also mean now when you use it in the present tense. Word order is important in Spanish, so it doesn't matter if you're talking in the past tense or the present tense, you're going to put this one way up in front in your sentence before your verb. So you'll say something like, I'm going now, ya me voy, or are you going now, ya te vas? Since I just brought up the past tense, let's go ahead and talk about that. This is the simple past or the preterite. If I went off or headed out, me fui. If you went off, headed out, or left, te fuiste. You can easily incorporate this into some of the time expressions you learned in lesson 13. ¿Cuándo te fuiste? When did you leave? When did you head out? When did you go? Me fui hace 2 horas. I left, headed out 2 hours ago. All right, let's do a quick recap. Let's say I'm making a sentence and I can't figure out if I'm supposed to say voy or me voy. If the destination is not stated or implied, I say me voy. If it is stated or implied, I'd say voy, like voy a la farmacia. I'm going to the pharmacy. Well, that's it for today. As usual, I encourage you to go practice your Spanish as much as possible, not just what we covered today, but everything we've covered in previous lessons, because, well, we don't want you to forget anything. Hasta luego.